I'm Myles from Gear4music, and I'm here with Ben from Evans to talk about their new reduced volume DB1 drumheads and cymbals. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to see more drum-related content on Gear4music Drums. So what is DB1?
DB1 is our newly released range of drumheads and cymbals designed to give you tone at a reduced volume level.
So the reduced volume comes from the single ply mesh?
It depends on which element of the kit we're talking about. So you can split DB1 down into 4 separate elements. We have a head specifically for the snare drum, which is constructed from our Shockweave mesh, single ply mesh, with a G12 laser cut film. We call this our snare sim. And essentially this replicates what a snare wire does on the bottom of a snare drum, but at a reduced volume level. If you did use your snare wires with a drum, you would get a lot more volume.
Okay.
So the idea with this is you do not need to have your snare wires engaged. You can even remove them. You don't have to have a drum with snare wires on to replicate the crack and sensitivity of a snare wire. For the tom-tom heads, we use our kinetic transfer foam attached to the underside, and we also have an impact patch on the batter side of the drum head. For the tom-tom element of DB1, we had to approach that head slightly differently, and we use our kinetic transfer foam and an impact patch in order to activate the resonant head of the drum, which gives us our reduced volume on the tom side of things. Finally, on the drum head side, we have our kick drum head. So again, it utilizes our kinetic transfer foam and a slightly different material impact patch, which can give you increased attack if necessary, or you can remove that for a softer punch to the kick drum. And then the icing on the cake is our DB1 cymbals. So these are an addition to the pack, really just to complement the whole headset. And we wanted cymbals and heads to be at exactly the same reduced volume level, hence why we're entering into the low volume cymbal market as well.
So with the reduced volume, I'm assuming they can be used in a range of areas, not only just for playing, but for teaching maybe, for conversation over the top of an acoustic kit?
Absolutely. The mesh head as we know it is a silent drum head, so that can be used for practice or triggering. With DB1, there's an audible tone from the drum. That was the whole idea with this range, was it gave you that audible feedback, which you don't necessarily get from a mesh head. So the applications really stretch far and beyond just low volume or quiet practice. You can think of applying this to a low volume acoustic gig, for example. Group teaching, group lessons, you will often struggle to give direction with a full-blown acoustic drum kit with standard heads on it. And that's a struggle teachers have had for decades.
It's nothing over the top of a kit.
Yeah, it's nothing new. But the idea of a kind of silent head in theory is great, but without you getting that audible feedback from the kit, it's not the most inspiring kind of way to play a drum kit. With DB1, because you're still getting a drum tone, but at that reduced level, it's a lot nicer to play on. It's a lot nicer to practice with.
So the player doesn't feel cheated by having to have a reduced volume head and saying, oh, I wish I was on a full acoustic kit. They still get a semi-acoustic tone at the reduced volume.
Yes, and the other thing to mention is the feel of the heads. Because we're adding mass to this mesh, a lot of people find standard mesh heads to be a little springy. With these, they feel more like a standard polyester drum head. And obviously with the cymbals, in comparison to maybe using some of the neoprene silencer pads or cymbals on electric kits, these cymbals really feel like you're playing, an alloy cymbal, but at a much reduced volume level.
So you've already got the DB0 mesh heads that are great for that quiet practice without giving too much tone. Where did these sit in comparison to them?
In comparison to them, think of them as the next step up in volume. So these are 80% reduced volume.
Instead of a massive amount reduced with just the single mesh.
Yeah, and you know, mesh isn't completely silent, but in comparison to these, the main difference is you get a tone from the actual drum. So the toms sound like toms.
Yeah. You feel like you're behind an acoustic kit,
Exactly,
not behind a big electric.
Yes, correct. So that was the whole point in us designing this and going down the rabbit hole of reduced volume drumming. Beyond that low volume practice sort of application, you can think outside the box with these. Of course, you can use them for lower volume practice with much more audible feedback. But think about things like acoustic gigs where you may take a cajon, or you might have to use hot rods or brushes to bring the volume down.
But we're not all natural cajon players.
Well, this is it. So it allows you to sit in your comfort zone behind the kit with the sticks that you're used to playing as well, but with that reduced volume level. Now we've designed these in a way where you can trigger the heads, you can use microphones on the heads. A lot more people are using things like the Yamaha ED10 unit, and these do work with those elements. Another application for these is teaching. So many tutors teach 2 to 3 students, especially in a school setting. With 3 or 4 drummers all playing acoustic drums, it's very difficult to be heard over the top of those.
Yeah.
So this allows you to have that conversational volume to your voice without having to shout over the drum heads. They really do allow you to teach a very socially acceptable volume, shall we say.
And even for the young players just getting into drumming, they can sit behind an acoustic kit and at least feel like they are getting some response, not being cheated out of the drumming experience.
Exactly. And that was the whole goal, is we wanted these to play and feel as close to a standard acoustic drum set, but obviously at that reduced volume level.
So when you get these, putting them on the drum set, are they easy to put on?
Very easy to put on. You fit them like a standard head to start with, but each of the elements does require to be set up slightly differently from the next. So we can dive into that in a bit more detail.
So along with the reduced volume drum heads, everyone's also offering DB1 cymbals for the first time. Are they reduced volume with the heads?
They are indeed. The addition of the cymbals were known as a drum head manufacturer first and foremost, but this was kind of the cherry on the top to really complete the DB1 range. So the cymbals are an 80% reduced volume set. So the cymbals come with a 20-inch ride, an 18-inch crash, a 16-inch crash, and a set of 14-inch hats in a nifty little bag like that. So currently they're not available in separate, but anybody who is converting their drum kit to reduced volume is likely going to be replacing their standard acoustic cymbals.
You're not just going to get a low volume hi-hat.
Exactly. And this is why we had the addition of the 18-inch crash in the set as well. Most drummers, and I don't want to tarnish everybody with the same brush, but most players as a standard setup would play 14 hats, 20 ride, 16 and 18 crash. So we've replicated that in our low volume cymbals.
Excellent.
So just a final point on the cymbals, the coating on the cymbals. This is what makes these quite unique to other competitor products on the market. We nanoplate the cymbal. So unlike some of the other kind of powder-based coatings, these don't chip and wear like, other powder-coated metal products out there.
Okay. Highly durable, especially for the young drummer wanting to practice and get that acoustic drum feel.
Yeah. And it keeps your kit looking fresh.
Yeah. So we've gone over the features and benefits of the DB1 drum heads and cymbals, but we're going to put them to the test. I have with me a decibel meter, and we're going to see where these sit in comparison to some DB0 mesh heads and some G2 acoustic drum heads. Let's take a look. And there you have it. That is the Evans DB1 range, which includes the heads and the cymbals. And I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised at the way it responds to my touch, the way it gives you the feedback, and where it sits between the DB0 and the G2s. If you've liked this content, then please feel free to like and subscribe. I've been Myles, and that was Ben from Evans. Thank you for watching.